Let's get dangerous!
Hello everybody, I'm Kate Cass. Welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Ducktales episode, Let's Get Dangerous. Just when I thought the hype for the terror that flaps in the night couldn't get higher after the Duck Knight returns, this episode brought it to a whole nother level. There was a good amount of build-up for this one. From seeing Gosalyn and Taurus Bulba tease at Comic-Con last year, back when cons were a thing, to the reveal that Darkwing's proper return to the series would be in his own hour-long dedicated episode, to the extensive promotional campaign in the week or so leading up to the episode's premiere, igniting the already burning excitement to see more of Drake Mallard's caped escapades in the DuckTales reboot. There was so much hype behind this episode that it has led to many fans speculating that this could be the start of something bigger for Darkwing Duck in the future. For me, this episode is big enough without having to broach that topic, but I found that I do want to talk about it quite a bit, so here's what I'm going to do. This video will be exclusively about reviewing the episode as is, as a big mid-season finale for Season 3, and next month's DuckTales video will be dedicated to theorizing on if this is a backdoor pilot for a Darkwing reboot. Sound good? Well, since I can't hear you all, I'm gonna assume it's good. So let's see what dangers the Ducks get wrapped up in this hour-long mid-season finale. Let's get dangerous. While Scrooge and the triplets head to St. Canard to check out a scientific breakthrough by one Taurus Bulba, Launchpad checks in on his pal Drake and how he's handling the mantle of Darkwing Duck, with one determined little girl bridging the gap between these two stories and putting Drake's desire to be a hero to the ultimate test. Let me tell ya, when I saw Drake again looking all cool and mysterious as he watches over the city of St. Canard, before tripping and falling on his face, it's clear that despite what's changed, this is still the Darkwing Duck we know and love. And it's a ton of fun to see Drake begin to flesh out his role as a wannabe hero more. Getting to see his lair fully realized in the DuckTales reboot is especially cool. It even comes with a snarky supercomputer. Plus, with Drake being a massive fanboy, it adds an extra layer of funny to the fact that everything around here has Darkwing Duck's face plastered all over it, instead of it just being an ego thing. Don't get me wrong, that explanation wasn't bad, it's just a nice change of pace. It was also nice to see Drake and Launchpad hanging out again when there wasn't more important stuff going on in the background. They even have their initial nicknames for each other now, which is just so great to hear again. There are a lot of little details like that in this episode, and since I'm much more familiar with the original Darkwing Duck than the original DuckTales, I can appreciate that thought in a way I usually don't. And there were still quite a few that had to be pointed out to me. I'm not going to point out every single one that I or someone else noticed, because we'd be here all day, but I'll highlight a few as we go. Another thing that was already great, but really gets to take center stage here, is the voice work from Chris Diamantopoulos. I think I'm pronouncing that right, no one corrected me last time. Drake's challenges are more varied than his debut episode, and in the process, the range in voice acting is wider and more entertaining. It's also cool to see new character traits of this Drake that ring true to what we're familiar with when it comes to Darkwing Duck. Seeing Drake show off for the cameras made me realize how being an out-of-work actor makes perfect sense as a Darkwing Duck backstory, while Launchpad once again embodies all of us watching.
Let's get dangerous.
Going into the story, Drake has an unusual hurdle, trying to be a hero in a city that has an insanely low crime rate, almost non-existent, thanks to Zan Owlson, of all people. I don't think I've ever covered an episode she was in, but seeing her go from working for crazy billionaires to cleaning up a major city is kinda perfect for her. She deserved to be in charge of something, even if it messes with Drake's plans. And I get that Drake sticks around here because this is the city Darkwing fought in the show, and this place was apparently a hotspot for supervillains before Allison came along, but if this show taught me anything, is that you could go literally anywhere else and find an eccentric crime family or a cursed something or other to fight. Well, this is a situation Drake sticks with one failure after the other to become the hero that inspired him as a kid. And in true Darkwing Duck fashion, it's touching and funny all at the same time. I know mistaking movers for robbers is a tired cliche, but watching Drake move that couch is hilarious to me for some reason. But even with these roadblocks, Darkwing might be on the path to making a name for himself as a hero thanks to Taurus Bulba, played by James Monroe Englehart. While we're here, can I just say how much I love that Disney is really embracing Englehart as a recurring talent? That doesn't happen with Disney's Broadway performers that often, hardly at all. But this is not the first time Englehart has done voice work for Disney, and I certainly hope it won't be the last. It's fitting that Taurus Bulba appears here since he was the main antagonist in the first episode of the original Darkwing Duck series, but once again, there are some changes. Like, instead of being a crime boss, he's the scientist who built the ramrod, or at least claims he did. The ramrod is, again, the exact same name as the invention Taurus Bulba was after in the original series, except they have very different functions. This one being able to pull things from other dimensions, and the original being able to manipulate gravity or something. It's pretty convenient that ramrod is such a nonsense name that you can keep the fan service while completely changing its function to suit your story. But anyway, Taurus Bulba has a great first impression. Even though most audience members can figure out he's the villain behind all the charm, whether you're familiar with the original series or not, he presents himself so enthusiastically, complimenting everyone around him, even building Darkwing's reputation as a hero, that it's easy to see why the characters in the show wouldn't come to that conclusion. But while Bulba is building himself up in the eyes of the public, someone is trying very hard to take him down. As we get to the moment we've all been waiting for since the Duck Knight returns, the introduction of Gosalyn Waddlemeyer, played by Stephanie Beatrice of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame. Another great casting choice. She really does a great job with Gosalyn's unique brand of spirit. Once again, we have something of a reinvention. While Gosalyn is still the free-spirited firecracker who charges into any fight no matter the odds, she has a more complicated situation this time. Like before, her grandfather was the main inventor of the ramrod, but unlike last time, he worked alongside Bulba and mysteriously disappeared after discovering a fault in the system, leaving Bulba to take all the credit and screw the consequences. I really like the addition of seeing Gosalyn more involved in her grandpa's work. She shows more scientific skills involving chemistry and computers, and is really impressed by the tech in Darkwing's lair. And aw, she's wearing her original shirt in the flashback. That's adorable. Rather than being an out-of-place orphan, Gosalyn is more of a streetwise runaway, knowing that something is wrong and charging into it to find the truth for herself, since right now, herself is all she has. You definitely feel her loneliness, that feeling that she can't count on anyone besides herself. She tries to get help, but Darkwing's not willing to risk his reputation at this point. So in a great tie-in with the Ducktales cast, Dewey offers to help Gosalyn find the answer she's looking for. I love this idea. Incorporating Dewey sympathizing with a kid who lost a parental figure and just wants to find the truth is a connection I'm so glad they took advantage of. It also highlights that despite this being the big Darkwing Duck episode, the DuckTales characters aren't going to sit this one out, giving them consistent agency in the events of the story. There's a nice little subplot where Huey has his suspicions about the ramrod, while Louie doesn't want him asking questions and just wants to reap the rewards this invention can give. It's motivation that represents both of them as characters well, and eventually leads to a connection that ties this whole mystery around the ramrod back into the ongoing story arc of Season 3, with the ramrod being powered by something called the Solego circuit found in Finch's journal. It might seem like I'm making way too big a deal out of how much the DuckTales stuff plays into all this. I mean, why wouldn't it? It's an episode of DuckTales. However, Let's Get Dangerous is more about Darkwing and Gosalyn, and they could have just kept it that way and everyone would have been happy. I just appreciate that they made this adventure so significant to the larger story of the series in so many ways at the same time, and there is still more to come. Although that little bit of lore about all fictional stories being from other dimensions sounds very similar to an episode of Darkwing Duck twitching channels. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. Check it out on Disney+, you'll see what I mean.
Did you know I have my own TV show here? Oh, you're in it too.
I know, they always draw my nose wrong.
Getting back to Darkwing, thanks to Launchpad displaying his greatest strands of the character of seeing the greatest potential in others, they decide to investigate this whole thing. A situation that sees Drake and Gosalyn slowly beginning to trust each other. With Drake seeing the evidence for himself and the cracks in Bulba's excuses, that makes him trust Gosalyn's claims more, and even getting to see them work together to take on Bulba in a fight. Seeing them back each other up not only feels like natural progression for this relationship we've all been eagerly waiting for DuckTales 2017 to tackle, but it's also fun and exciting to see them work so well as a team. And it's an encounter that begins to show that Drake is just as accident-prone as his 90s counterpart, leading to some fun slapstick. Which brings me to a larger part of the production work. I don't know if this is just me, but the animation seems to have a lot more pep to it this time. I think there's extra frames to add exaggeration and expression to this whole thing, incorporating a bit more squash and stretch than normal to make it more lively, which certainly helps with the elaborate action scenes and more exaggerated comedy than the show is used to, but even things like Dewey and Launchpad in the limo in the beginning has way more expression and fluidity to the movements. This was extra impressive to me when I found out this episode was still in production by the time the crew all had to go into quarantine, having to work on the episode from home. So it was no small feat that it looks as good as it does in practically every single second. At this point, Bulba drops all pretenses and brings to the DuckTales world the fearsome 4 from the Darkwing Duck TV show, which sure was a convenient way to write themselves out of that corner they put themselves into with this whole TV show premise, using the multiverse angle to bring characters back they really shouldn't be able to. Why not? It worked for The Flash.
What's your story then, handsome?
I'm from another Earth, and I'm spoken for.
For the most part, I think they have a lot of fun with the Fearsome 4. They seem well represented as characters, the voice work is solid, in fact I think Crackerjack is voiced by his original voice actor, and it leads to a lot of cool and creative battles. And by that, I mean wailing on another Disney Afternoon cameo, Bonkers. This one really made me smile, and I have no idea why. I guess I just thought it was cute they found a way to include him that was so true to his character. Yes, I did watch Bonkers as a kid, but then it gave me a nightmare at one point and I never watched it again. Don't ask me what it was that made that happen, I genuinely do not remember. I did see a lot of mixed feelings concerning Bushroot though, going from the most sympathetic villain to basically a walking plant zombie. Personally, I liked it. I thought it was a cool direction to take for Bushroot, that he's so consumed by his plant side that there's nothing left of what he was. Or at the very least it's buried very, very deep. It's kinda tragic, really creepy, and very effective for creating tension. I was personally surprised by how little they use Megavolt. For the guy who many label as Darkwing's arch enemy, he got like 2 lines and no one-on-one encounters. That was weird to me, but hardly a deal breaker. And you'd think with these guys running around and Bulba officially dropping his facade for maniacal intentions and a cool bad guy scar that we'd have enough villains to work with. What the heck, there's room for one more.
What are you doing? Director Buzzard.
Yeah, now we've got Bradford to worry about. F.O.W.L apparently recruited Bulba to get the Slego circuit to work, but Bradford steps in when things go off the rails. And I realized while writing this that F.O.W.L recruiting Taurus Bulba only for him to go rogue also happened in an episode of Darkwing Duck. These people either really did their homework or are massive nerds. Or both. I'm just in awe that Let's Get Dangerous can effectively incorporate 6 well-known villains into its story when Amazing Spider-Man 2 couldn't manage half that with triple the length. Bradford is yet another way of connecting this fun Darkwing Duck-focused adventure to the Season 3 storyline in a major way, with Bradford winding up having to team up with the captured triplets to get out of this mess. It's here where we get much more insight into Bradford, how he doesn't see himself as a villain, that F.O.W.L is simply reigning in the chaos caused by Scrooge and others. When you think about it, F.O.W.L's mission statement has been rather vague up to this point, which I think a lot of us, including me, took for granted because, well, it's F.O.W.L. Their acronym literally means unpleasantly stealing the world. But like so much before it, the DuckTales reboot puts a twist on that. As far as Bradford's concerned, he's stealing it back from the chaos Scrooge and the family bring.
You didn't meddle with forces you didn't understand. Magic and Dispel would never have broken the bin. The moon would never have invaded Earth, and all of reality wouldn't be in jeopardy.
Okay, I don't think I'm the only one spotting flaws in his logic here, especially when you consider some of his team members, but since we've got a lot more to go over, I'm gonna leave the discussion on Bradford and F.O.W.L here for now. But trust me, this is not the end of this conversation. On the subject of that subplot though, the triplets are really well presented here. Showing skills and persistence in the face of the danger in the situation really shows how far they come as adventurers, and I like how they get suspicious of Bradford along the way. They could have been fooled with how poorly Bradford was keeping his cover for the sake of a gag, but they thankfully don't have to dumb down the characters to try and be funny. It's still funny, but they're clever about it. The voice work helps there too, especially from... Wait, Bradford is played by Mark Evan Jackson? I never realized that before. F.O.W.L is run by the same guy in charge of The Bad Place. That's so funny. And the laughs and intensity continue whenever we check back in with Darkwing and the others. Yeah, despite this being his big episode, I haven't talked about him for a while. Well, don't worry, I'm sure Darkwing Duck is ready to spring into action against an exciting threat.
We are doomed!
Oh. Well, that makes more sense, honestly. I know it's kind of weird to see Darkwing Duck think he can't handle something, but again, I really like this. Sure, Drake was ready to fight crime, but he knows when he's outmatched. This is a lot more than he bargained for. Compared to Gosalyn, who, rather than being overwhelmed by the odds, is so focused on her goal to get her grandpa back and put Bulba in his place that it drives her to charge into action and gives her the confidence that they can take it on. Which in turn gives Drake the motivation to get out there and stop Bulba and the Fearsome Four, if for no other reason than to keep an eye on Gosalyn, even if he's not sure this is a threat he can handle. That's the thing about these sections of the episode. Yes, it's funny, exciting, and has a group being chased by a giant Quackerjack robot, which is just beautiful, but it also puts Drake and Gosalyn's forming relationship and their own goals and desires through a tougher test. Drake wanted to be a hero purely to live a childhood dream and inspire others like the show inspired him, but when the time comes for him to be able to live that dream, it's much more difficult than he thought. At points, it feels like he's just trying not to get killed. Meanwhile, Gosalyn doesn't see the danger, or at least doesn't care. Her grandpa needs her, Bulba needs to be stopped, getting through these guys is the only way to do that, so just do it. Gosalyn's a capable kid, but she's also reckless, thinking she could take on a threat with sheer determination, so she pushes and pushes as Drake continuously pulls back. This may be the point where they work together, but they aren't really working together. In their fight with Bulba they were, and while they didn't stop him, they got results. Here, it's one wall after the other, eventually leading to them snapping at each other for not listening to one another. While Drake and Gosalyn have different goals, the solution to each of their conflicts comes with a healthy dose of perspective. They have had a lot of trouble seeing eye to eye at points in the show, but it becomes a lot easier once they each see the full picture. Drake got that in part 1 when he hears why Gosalyn is doing what she's doing, and thanks to some convincing from Launchpad, and Gosalyn gets it in part 2 thanks to light shed on Drake's actions by, who else? Launchpad. Like I've said, it's what Launchpad does best. He assembles the three of them into an adventure family, which is not only a cool way to show that Launchpad sees how strong the Duck family are when they face dangers together, but is frankly just adorable. Launchpad is loyal, understanding, and while he's not always the brightest, that also doesn't mean he overthinks or gets too caught up in his own problems, so he can see what's going on with those around him. He sees how much this is really getting to Gosalyn, goes to comfort and assure her, and in the process helps her see just how hard Drake is working to help her, both in this moment and right before the final fight.
This isn't like TV, it's real life where there's real danger.
I haven't got the heart to tell her.
And that's not where Launchpad's contributions end, because he gets to finally utilize his greatest asset: immense amounts of Darkwing Duck knowledge.
Daring Duck of mystery, champion of right.
Hey, it's me watching the show on Disney+. Skip the intro, are you mad? I'm easier on Launchpad than some, but I am not used to praising him this much. This episode just gets everything right with him. The gags are solid, his dedicated faith in the best of others, even when circumstances make it difficult for the ones he believes in, is on full display, even being inspiring. I'm starting to think Darkwing Duck truly does bring the best of Launchpad front and center. But Launchpad isn't the only one helping Drake, as he's been consulting a very familiar and beloved character on how to get Dr. Wildmeyer back, Fenton. Yeah, you didn't think I was gonna go without mentioning this appearance, did you? Fenton's involvement is not only very welcome, but brings about some fascinating revelations. Like the cool explanation that Fenton helped Drake out with his equipment and invented his supercomputer Wanda, which several viewers pointed out is voiced by Jamila Jamil, who also plays Gandra. Just gonna leave that aside for now. But Drake's also pals with him. How? Because he doesn't know he's Gizmoduck. This is brilliant. It's hilarious in a meta sense that an observant mass vigilante is the only character who hasn't managed to figure out Fenton is Gizmoduck, a secret that I'm sure you all remember he's terrible at hiding, but the fact that Drake has this antipathy towards Gizmoduck while considering Fenton a friend and confidant just opens so many possibilities for stories, both in the comedic and even dramatic, since we still don't really know why Drake has such an issue with Gizmo. It's such a creative development on the dynamic between these two characters that I'm not even going to question how this is the view of Fenton from, I'm assuming, behind his visor when his beak is outside the helmet. That is a road on the cartoon nitpicking path I do not want to go down. And I guess it would have been rather silly if all of his calls looked like this. Well, at least they found a good reason for why Fenton couldn't help out despite being in the area. He's indisposed by bushroot in a manner that could lead to many inappropriate jokes that I am not going to make because I try to run a classy joint here. But I will play this clip again.
Tentacles. I hate tentacles.
Despite that, Drake's been consulting Fenton tirelessly. Whenever he's not running after and subsequently getting beaten to a pulp by the Fearsome Four, he's trying to find a solution to helping with Gosalyn's problem. It's only for a few seconds, but it's a moment of clarity that really shows Drake's greatest virtue in becoming a hero, his persistence. At the beginning of the episode, he was lamenting that no one needed his help, that he couldn't achieve this dream he's had since he was a kid. Suddenly, Gosalyn comes along with something deep and important. Sure, he's hesitant at first because he has the superficial side of heroism, but then he remembers the deeper reason for why he kept the cape. So even with the odds stacked against him, he works through every angle he can possibly think of to save her grandpa, not wanting to let the first person who truly needs his help down, exhausting himself by working on all this for days. Wait, days? How long has it been? I can't tell in this city shrouded in Batman the Animated Series style perpetual darkness. And does that mean poor Fenton has been at all this for days too? Well, whatever. That's not as important as Gosalyn seeing how hard Drake's been pushing himself and putting her drive to push forward aside a bit for him to get some rest. It's adorable, a cute role reversal of that scene in the first Darkwing episode, and my favorite scene in this episode. It's so wholesome, I can't even. The role reversals continue on once we get back to the action. Drake and Gosalyn each applying the other's methods to this challenge. Drake charges into the fight to get a result once and for all, with no showmanship or boasting, just standing up to the threat, while Gosalyn decides to step back and come up with a stealthy approach. They don't technically do this together, but they use these methods because of their time with each other, and it's these tactics that help them get back to the Ramrod and be able to take on Taurus Bulba again, pushing through their doubts and the greater odds together with the team assembly this has all been building up to in an awesome final fight. Like a big climax should, it has all the best things about the episode rolled up into one. Exciting team-ups, creative action, clever interactions between the characters, with really cool ways of using the villains' powers against each other, and lots of references. I know, I didn't expect references to be in this episode either. Personally, I like that they gave Gosalyn a crossbow. That's a cool callback to her attempts at being a superhero in the original show. But in such an epic battle, you might wonder, where's Scrooge? Well, remember, we're dealing with
tearing the fabric of reality. Anything can happen.
And in this case, anything is this.
Bless me bagpipes! A sea monster ate my ice cream!
The sheer joy that people reacted to this clip with just baffled me. I had no idea what the heck this was, and I'm still not positive I do after it's been explained to me. Apparently this is something from the classic series, which I've made it clear before I don't know that well. Thankfully one of you guys on Twitter shed some light on this for me. Thanks, Jinx. But what's so special about this scene? Is it a really well-remembered moment from the show because of how ridiculous it sounds? Did it become a meme at one point? What?
I don't get it. At all.
Well, luckily, Gosalyn takes the time to save him and the triplets from that nostalgic purgatory while she searches for her grandfather. But she's not able to locate where he is in the multiverse before the Ramrod starts to become unstable. And Gosalyn has to decide if just the chance to get Dr. Wildmeyer back is worth the greater risk. Taurus Bulba, someone who has been obsessed with reshaping the world in his image, even tries to convince her that it is. But in the end, Gosalyn makes the sacrifice of seeing her only family again by destroying the Ramrod and saving the world. Learning what Drake knows rather well and what Launchpad told her. That it's better to do the right thing, especially when it's hard, and that winning can also mean losing. On the subject of the Ramrod, I know a lot of people were disappointed that the Fearsome Four got sent back to their dimension, but remember, the Selego circuit is still out there. I get the feeling this is not the last we've seen of them. Especially when you remember that the Selego circuit was stolen in the very next episode. Whoops. All that aside, it's a powerful and devastating resolution to this massive adventure, and the moment where Drake silently goes over to comfort this kid who just gave up her whole world to save the entire world is just too sweet. And then this happened.
Bradford F.O.W.L.
Now, I could see some people being annoyed that this major reveal was framed as a joke, but I absolutely loved it. It calls out every evil cartoon organization ever with their distinct and obvious logos plastered on everything.
Suppose you'd rather fly around in an unmarked helicopter.
Yes!
And just like that, this episode becomes a major milestone in the series and sets up the dangers that lay ahead of the Duck family. But first, we've got to wrap things up with our almost new family. Because there's still the possibility that Dr. Wildmeyer could be out there, Drake and Gosalyn haven't reached the father-daughter relationship quite yet, but that technicality is really the only reason why. In the meantime, Drake asked Gosalyn to be his crime-fighting partner, which is a new angle that I thought was really cool. Gosalyn has proven she's more than capable of standing up to a fight, and now this universe's equivalent to Batman has got a Robin. You don't see many kid sidekicks running around these days. This could be a lot of fun. Bringing home this Darkwing Duck's ultimate mantra, to not give up, to get back up no matter how many times you're beaten down. Both Drake and Gosalyn have been beaten down a lot, but now when they try to get back up, they'll have a nearby hand to help lift them up. This just seems like the beginning of a much larger story for them, especially with the implication that Dr. Wandelmeyer is not gone for good, with Drake promising Gosalyn that he'll help her find her family. But those watching closely can probably tell that maybe he already has. This episode couldn't have ended on a better image than watching these three race off to fight the criminal class of St. Canard together once again. Overall, even with how long this video is, which I feel like I should just accept that this is the standard length of my reviews now, there's still so much more I can say about Let's Get Dangerous. It is a big episode in length, in events, and in characters involved. Like Darkwing's debut in The Dark Knight Returns, this episode has a lot going on. From the long-awaited introduction of Gosalyn to too many references to Darkwing Duck and obscure areas of the Disney television canon to count, to essential developments with F.O.W.L that have been building throughout season 3, to solidifying Drake's position of taking on the mantle of Darkwing Duck. Before, even with good intentions, Drake was just a guy trying to live out a childhood fantasy, even getting beaten down more than ever before once the threats got bigger and badder. But when Gosalyn comes along, he has something to fight for. Suddenly, it's not just about what he wants to build anymore, but how he can do the best job he can for someone else. Which in turn inspires Gosalyn to think things through, make tough choices, and ultimately not give up and embrace this new family she's become a part of. It really doesn't feel like Drake was complete as a superhero until Gosalyn came along, which for Darkwing Duck is how it should be, setting the stage for a bright future for these heroes. Again, this is something I'm going to get into in a future video, but Let's Get Dangerous sets up a lot of interesting ideas and dynamics that are just begging to be expanded on. This is just ripe with potential for many more entertaining and creative adventures. The whole special walks the fine line of being faithful to Darkwing Duck while changing and reinventing the story and characters enough to warrant telling it again. With great use of its massive cast, strong and funny dialogue all throughout, an overwhelming amount of fan service, fluid and atmospheric animation work, a wide range of excellent voice work, exciting and dramatic story beats and twists that come to a bittersweet yet heartwarming conclusion and opens the floodgates to a cornucopia of possibilities. Once again, the Ducktales team knocked the Darkwing Duck story out of the park. Who knows what the future holds for these heroes, but this adventure is without question going to be a beloved favorite among its fervent feathered fanatics. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.